Okay, welcome everyone. Today is the last set of office hours for the challenge phase that ends on Tuesday, August 6th. Thank you all for being here. I think most of you are familiar with the format. My name is Laura Sasaki. I'm Program and Project Supervisor here at the CPUC in the BEAD branch. And if we can go on to the next slide. All right, it is standard. We haven't deviated. So housekeeping items, and then we'll go into our Q&A and then next steps and wrap up. Okay, so again, most of you are familiar with this, but for those of you who are new, welcome. For office hours, what we do is we ask you to put your questions in chat. That enables us to call on you in order. We would ask that you keep yourself muted until we call on you. We may need clarification on a question if it's not clear the way that it's written. I'll ask for that. And we'll go through a first round of questions to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. We'll try and limit that to about 5 minutes just because we do have a lot of participants. And we want to make sure that we're able to get to all of your questions. If you have a follow-up on someone else's question that resonated with you, or it is a question that you have as well, go ahead and put that in chat, and we'll call on you as we get in order. One thing to note, we had a bit of a glitch last time where I was not seeing all of the questions. So if I keep going and I have skipped over a question, feel free to either send me a direct message or hopefully one of the team can also just flag that for me. But just know that if that happens, we will come back and get to you. Next slide. All right, so this is an opportunity for all of you to ask questions about the challenge process and the BEAD program in general. Just a reminder that we cannot provide specific feedback or guidance on any evidence that you might want to submit outside of the challenge process. That is just to keep things within the process and going the way that NTIA has asked us to do. CPUC is required to follow the program rules for NTIA, which administers the BEAD program. Q&A from this meeting will get posted on the website and on FAQs. And as you may have noted, we are recording the session and we will post it. One other bit of information is that in addition to providing or not providing feedback on the evidence, we also need to be just mindful of just any guidance outside of what we have for the policy notice and the initial proposal volume 1. As we go through today, we'll be providing links for you in the chat so that you do have reference materials to go back to. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started with our questions. So Bruce, welcome. So Bruce is saying, assume we have found 6 served BSLs testing below 120 in one census block group. Walk us through the process of filing an area challenge. So we'll go through the area challenge once. And Dustin, if you can go ahead and share your screen. And walk through an area challenge, please. And Bruce, you want to do that for speed, correct?
Yes, for speed.
And you have just to confirm that for each of those BSLs, you do have all of the speed tests, the 3 days for each of those locations, et cetera.
Yes, we have that, and we have the evidence and all the documentation.
Okay, great. Okay, so Dustin is going to share his screen here and walk through getting that filed.
So I think one thing that's important to note about area challenges is that you don't necessarily file an area challenge per se. You file the sufficient number of valid challenges to reach the threshold for an area challenge, which then, if those challenges are past the initial review and are determined to have included that minimum level of evidence, then ahead of the rebuttal phase, an area challenge is generated from the challenges that met that threshold. That's important to note for a few reasons. One, it just I just want to reiterate, it's the normal challenge process, and you just need to make sure that you submit 6 within a census block group. But also, because of the way it's calculated and the way the process works, it can also be spread across multiple challenges or challengers. What's important is that there are 6 challenges against the same provider and technology combination within the same census block group of the same challenge type in order to meet that threshold. And so for a speed challenge, you would first navigate to the provider service level challenge, select the speed option. If you are, let's presume that you're not doing this as an MDU challenge, but rather as individual locations, you would pick a provider and then pick a technology type. And then you would then select the locations. I'm seeing that this has a different configuration than the production portal because it's limiting the locations to 1. But in the production portal, you can select multiple locations. So you would add the location to the challenge. There are several ways that you can add those locations. If they're all in the same area, it's easy to just click and add challenge to location. You can also upload a CSV of the location IDs if you have that. And then you'd make sure, if you want to trigger an area challenge, you would want to select 6 locations within a census block group and make sure that you have the sufficient evidence to submit that challenge. For the speed test challenges, since 3 tests are required at each location, there's a CSV that you're required to fill out. You will download that CSV, and just to give you a sense of what it looks like, I can share it really quick. Switch over. So when you download the spreadsheet, it will appear like this. You'll take the location ID, make sure it's properly inserted into these fields. And then you need 3 tests. Make sure that you put the date, time, IP address, download, and upload speed, and have 3 tests for each location ID, and then get that all filled out and uploaded to that evidence mapping field. And then in addition to that, you'll be asked to upload here all of the screenshots or supporting evidence for that test, and then you'll proceed through the steps and ultimately submit the challenge. So it's really just submitting a speed test challenge, and you need to challenge 6 locations within that census block group.
Great, thank you, Dustin.
Laura, I'd just like to add one thing. Do remember that they have to be on separate days, not all on the same day.
Yep.
Can I ask, this is Bruce again, can I ask if Justin Campbell has any questions?
Justin responded in chat that he's good. Okay, next question is from Landon. We've received many consumer challenges of type other. What will be done with this community feedback? And will we be able to download the data for the consumer challenges within our area? So the first question I'm going to give to Phil. So when there's other types of challenges, what steps do the organizations need to take in order for those to be considered?
Great. Thank you, Laura. And that's an excellent question. Thank you. The challenges go through the regular review process that we have with the CPUC review team. They're evaluated to ensure that the correct level of evidence is provided. And if they meet the criteria, they will be evaluated and they will be passed to an organization, nonprofit, or entity that can basically submit those on your behalf, and they will flow through the challenge process. And they will be considered valid challenges.
So I think that what Landon is asking is they are actually registered to submit on behalf of individuals. However, those are the ones we looked at earlier today at Landon. We did look at some of those to see what came through in other, and that's like kind of the narrative format. Unfortunately, in order for it to be considered as a challenge, we would still need some sort of, I looked at one where a company had come out to an individual's house, climbed up on the roof and said, hey, we don't have line of sight anywhere. I would hope at some point they closed a ticket out, provided some feedback, whether it was an email or if it was in the, a triplicate document that they give them a copy of, something that just said we can't provide service at that location. Something like that would be a great piece of evidence. I don't know, Amy or Phil, if you have anything else that you would add or suggest in there. Obviously, we've got screenshots if it shows that you can't get you can't get service at a location. That's a great piece of evidence. It's a little bit harder when we have narrative. We don't have anything to back that up.
That's Laura, that I would encourage to try and collect the best level of evidence that you can. In the instance that you talked about just there, that is unfortunately a common occurrence in many fixed wireless environments where you have no line of sight to a tower and there's just no way. But it would be good to have some type of record that they'd been out there, looked at the location and provided you with an answer. Maybe a lot of engineers go to sites and they have a written form they have to fill out. It may be worthwhile requesting a copy of that. For other types of challenges, the best level of evidence, screenshots, as much as you can get.
I was gonna say I don't know that I have anything more to add than that. As specific as you can be, as Phil and Laura have both said. Again, evidence of the visit to a location, whether it's again a text, an email, something of that sort, and a contemporary notation of what was said during that meeting will also be helpful. it is going to depend what comes in as to how, you know, how that gets reviewed. So the more specific, the more details, the better chances those challenges have.
Email chats that you can capture online where you can download a copy of the chat are an excellent source of evidence.
I think the challenge we've run into is the type other did not allow people to attach evidence. And so all we have is the narrative. We have reached out to many of those people to resubmit, but they feel like they've already done it and they're reticent to do it again, unfortunately.
You know what, we'll take that back. We have a meeting later this afternoon, and let us take that back. Just see if there's a way that we can enable them to be able to upload something.
Okay. Even if there's a way that we can add evidence on their behalf, that would be helpful, and then submit it. But currently there's no way.
That's what I was wondering, if they've emailed you something, if there's a way that you could submit it.
It's not evidence that it's not the same. I guess we can resubmit a whole new challenge on their behalf and change the challenge type if we're able to obtain that evidence from them. But that's been a tough conversation, trying to get that interactivity with the community.
Yeah, let us see if we've got a solution that's an easier lift to be able to do that. I'll be able to get back to you this afternoon.
I would suggest maybe research some AI tools that can comb through those and look for real feedback in the other, because the comments are amazing on some of them.
Yeah.
But there's no mechanism to turn those into real challenges at this point. So there might be a way to match that.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you for considering.
The second part of your question was if you can, if I can't remember which county you're with. I'm so sorry. But I think the question, Dustin, is there a feature where those who signed up for challenges and selected counties, can they download a list of those consumer challenges?
Yeah, with Nevada County, and we have been capturing the names and addresses of those who have submitted, but we'd love to get a full data dump of the many records. It would be good for our further development and use in our own broadband enhancement efforts.
I think the only thing that comes into play in downloading is PII, which would have to be stripped out. But in terms of the capability for download, I'm not sure if the system has that currently.
It does not currently have, and I think the export feature as described. We would need to discuss what fields would be included or redacted, or however we want to put it, for the export if we were to do that.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is from Scott. Will we see challenges in our portal after someone has submitted their first speed test, or only after their third speed test? So you guys can jump in if I get anything wrong here, but in order for a consumer or to be able to submit a speed challenge, you do have to provide the results and also the medians for those 3 speed tests taken on the 3 different days. So they wouldn't even be able to get to the point of submitting unless all 3 of those had been completed. I don't know, Phil or Dustin, if there's anything you'd like to add to that.
No, that's correct, Laura. Thank you. Yeah, you have to collect the information beforehand and then submit your challenge.
So Scott, just wanted to confirm with you that did address your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Ben, the existing service challenge type does not accept challenging unserved locations to their underserved status. Have not heard back. Can this be done in-house? So Phil and Amy, I'm going to give this one to you.
Amy, I'll start on this, and please add anything that you feel is necessary. The BEAD challenge process does not allow essentially changing the status of a location from unserved to undisturbed. The only way that can be done effectively is through the FCC BDC or broadband data collection system, where you would essentially file to say there's this difference in status for that location and it should be considered underserved rather than unserved. Would you like to add anything else, Amy?
No, thank you.
I'll just ask the one last question, then will BEAD funding going forward consider the upcoming BDC update? It's due on September 1st.
So I think we talked about this a little bit last week, and the answer is we don't know yet because a lot of the timing depends on when the FCC processes that it is released, and the timing between when California's BEAD challenge process concludes and we have the final map, and when all of that happens. So unfortunately, we can't answer that question today. What we can do is provide kind of like the things that might happen. And as we get closer, there will be more information that is released because we have to get that information from NTIA as well to be able to make that available. So yeah, as we get closer to the timing for both having the final map released as well as the sub-grantee selection process, there will be more information about that. Carrie, I think you're kind of seconding what Landon said about the not being able to attach evidence under other. I wanted to confirm that that was correct.
Actually, not exactly. Just under any of the challenges. For instance, sometimes people have the evidence, it's almost right, but maybe it doesn't have a timestamp on it. So then we have to email them and ask for that. And it's easier for them just to, I've been having people email it to me, but what I realize, it's the same thing. I can't attach it under the original challenge. I have to go in and create a whole new challenge under our permissible challenge portal.
Okay, so what you're saying is if there's been, I guess for lack of a better term, an omission when somebody submitted their consumer challenge.
Correct.
Dustin, is there a way that a consumer challenge can be edited or modified?
Yeah, just additional evidence added. Because I've also noticed that a lot of consumers are doing the same thing. They go in and then they go, they might be in 2 or 3 times trying to get it right.
There's not an established flow when converting a consumer challenge to a submitted challenge to attach additional evidence. Depending on the volume, if it's only a handful, the details could be kind of replicated and the challenge could be created separately with additional evidence
Which is
attached.
Yeah, and that sounds like what Kari, I'm sorry if I get your name wrong, is doing currently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, we can discuss if there's something we can do to make that more efficient in the short term, but unfortunately that would be the path at the moment.
And then I just want, can I just also just reiterate Landon's earlier comment about if there's a way, and I know I emailed you guys separately too, to download that data in Excel, the consumer data that comes in. I mean, we have access to it by copying and pasting it onto a separate tracking sheet. So we have all that information anyway, but we have to manually copy and paste it, which is the only way we can keep track, because it's multiple people working on multiple challenges, outreach, emails. It's so time consuming. If we were able just to be able to download that information, we're not getting any more personal information because we have the ability to copy and paste it anyway.
I think we just from our standpoint, I think we would just have to run that by legal just to make sure it's okay for us to say yes or provide that information. But I will ask that question for you today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Kevin, believe we looked at some of those. So the question last week, let's see, I asked last week about cellular-based services being listed as served when our read of the rules is that they should be at best listed as underserved. I was asked to provide some examples, did so, has not received a response yet. Do we have any guidance on that? So I think, Phil, I'll just ask for if you could provide, and Amy, some general guidance on that. And in the meantime, I'll double check the email that you sent as well.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for the question. Yes, most of the time, cellular-based services would be considered underserved. That is correct, but there are some instances where they are not. Because certain technologies are going to be able to provide, they're sort of exempt from that particular classification. Now, I'm looking for the question that you had, Kevin. I think Laura's also looking for it, because I believe we may have provided an answer to it. Amy, do you have anything further that you could add in terms of this classification of underserved versus served for some cellular-based services?
I mean, it really is going to depend on the specific instance here, Phil. In general, as I think we've discussed before, right, based on the pre-challenge modification that was accepted in the initial proposal volume 1, the cellular fixed wireless services that were listed as served and fit that definition should have been moved to underserved. But if there are exceptions that should have been in that, it would be great if those were flagged. And that should be an availability challenge that would have fit or it could just be a technology challenge, to be honest. And then, but if there is another location, we talked a little bit about if there is another location that makes that location or another type of technology that makes that location served. For example, a hybrid coax fiber provider that might provide service at 100 megabytes down and 20 megabytes per second up, then that location's going to remain served, even if that cellular provider is listed as underserved. So it's really case dependent on what the location looks like.
And Kevin, I just double checked through all of our questions and answers. We did not receive the additional information in the BEAD email, and I'm not sure if it was, I don't know if there's a bounce back on, the size of the files or whatnot, but I will email you directly from the BEAD inbox or the BEAD email. And then you can reply to that. That way we know that there's two-way communication going on. So I will do that as soon as we wrap this meeting. And then you can just send that back so we can take a look at those specific instances, but we don't unfortunately have that email thread.
Okay. I mean, I did send it right after our call, and I
totally believe you. I'm not.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't, in the situations that we're looking at, there's multiple challenges that are going to be required to make those locations eligible. And some of the other ones are a little bit more straightforward. Did I understand that we could challenge? I mean, didn't quite get a kind of a firm guidance there on your last comment. Amy, is that so? If we have a cellular service,
yes, you definitely can't challenge that. I think I was just skipping ahead if there is another provider that is providing.
Yeah. Oh, I get that. Yeah.
So, but yes.
That'd be challengeable as a technology challenge. And we could do that like on an area basis kind of a thing by picking whatever 6 locations in the census block. And we need to do that for each census block that in our county that we're seeing that.
Correct.
There's not like any kind of an effort that's going to go through and catch those in mass. We need to actually do those challenges. Like that's how I was getting at. If technologies are showing up as served when it should be underserved, that seems like something that could be solved in mass and not, us doing a challenge on every 100
I completely agree, but I think we need those specific locations again flagged. Okay. And so, to the extent that we can recover the information that you sent, we can also take a look at those.
I mean, it was just
there are mistakes.
One small example for discussion purposes, but we're seeing this pretty widespread. So, yeah. So we would need to do that for each census block?
Ideally, yes.
Wow, okay.
Kevin, I just
I was going to say, let us take a look first so that we're not putting you to unnecessary work so that we can take that back. I will note that, again, all of this data comes directly from NTIA through the FCC's data, and they have done that initial work on deduplication, and to the extent that there are mistakes, we would like to make sure that those are corrected.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A follow-up question from Ben. Is there an NTIA due date for the BEAD challenge map? The answer is it varies by state. So our 120-day challenge process, we have to have all of our information to NTIA no later than November 4th. At that point, it is turned over to them for their review if they need to come back and ask us for questions. And so at that point, the timeline is out of our hands. But once they do come back with their determination, that's when we'll have the final map that we will be using for the subgrantee selection process.
Will there be any input method to NTIA on that map?
That is what the challenge process is. That is the input to the map to NTIA is running the challenge process. Anything
so
else is what?
Once it's turned into NTIA, it's cast in stone.
No, once it's turned into NTIA, it is their final determination on everything that we submit to them.
And you don't know if NTIA will accept input on the information that's submitted.
They will not, because that's what the challenge process is designed for. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any of the other pieces, like Phil was saying, that's going to be through the broadband data collection to go on to the national map. But for the challenge process, the public input in gathering information is what they are having states run challenge process for.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Carolina, our dashboard shows that some challenges have their status updated from challenge to initial processed. Where can we find information on the different status types? So I think that those are pretty much right now. There's kind of 3, and you guys can keep me honest here. One is, I need to look at it. One is challenged, which means that it's been submitted and is being reviewed. Oh, I lied. There's another one. Withdrawn means that that you or somebody from your organization submitted a challenge and then for whatever reason withdrew that. Initial processed means that it has gone through, the evidence has been accepted, and it will be ready for rebuttal once rebuttal opens. And then our other stage, I'll let Phil talk to you a bit, but that is revisions requested.
Great. Thank you, Laura. And that's an excellent question, Carolina, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are viewing the portal on a daily basis and would love to know what the next step is. The revision request is probably one of the most important challenge states that I would like our challengers to to accommodate in the challenge process, because that means we have not rejected your challenge. It's just that we need more information, and our revision request will detail exactly what we would like you to provide. And once during the initial review process, we can do multiple requests for revisions. But as soon as the initial review process finishes, then there is no more revisions. So what I would say is I would encourage everybody that has a revision request to resubmit evidence as soon as they can so we can review it. And if we need to request additional evidence, we can then request some additional evidence from you, and you can respond before the close of the initial review, which is coming up, I think, the next week and a half, something like that.
Yeah, so just to add on to what Phil said, prior to the close of the challenge phase, which is midnight on August 6th, you can go back and forth on initial review. You can submit things, the team can look at it, get back to you, say we need more, you get back. Once we close the challenge phase and we go into the our 2 weeks of reviewing all of the evidence, if evidence is not evident, if revision has been requested and it is still outstanding, once we're in that 2-week phase, whatever you submit back to the review team becomes your final answer. So that's your final bit of information that goes in for review. It's not a back and forth at that point. So I think that that's probably one of the reasons that Phil is just saying, like, as much as possible, get things, if you have something that has been returned for revision, try and get things back prior to the 6th. That way, if there is further revision needed, we can get that back to you and you'll be able to turn that around to us. So just some things to keep in mind in terms of timing.
Is there a specific process for submitting revision requests on the portal, or is this just an email to BEAD at CPUC?
No, the portal walks you through the process.
And the process is entitled specifically what? Revision process or what? I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, so if a revision is requested, you will get a notification that it has been basically returned to you, the challenge.
And if I could just follow up on that, Laura, just for a second, Ben. And Dustin, please step in if I'm not quite correct, but the revision request is based upon a challenge, and there is a challenge ID associated with that. When you go and you review that challenge, you will have the opportunity to add additional information in a evidence requested section. So you will actually be walked through adding additional evidence.
So the revision process is triggered upon a challenge question initiated by the PUC.
We are submitting a revision request because we require some more information from you before we can finally process your challenge to either pass it or fail it.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question, just to confirm what I heard related to the area challenge, when we submit the 6 BSL availability challenge, do we just need to pick the 6 locations without selecting all other locations in the same census block? I thought we had to include all locations in the first step, not just the locations we were submitting evidence. And I think that's a joint answer from Dustin and from Phil.
Yeah, I can jump in. Phil, feel free to add in. In the portal, you only need to select the 6 locations that you have evidence for, or more. I mean, it can be, you can submit as many locations as you'd like, but only submit the locations that you actually have evidence for, not the ones that you would expect to be generated into an area challenge as a result of the challenged locations. Because again, just to kind of walk through those steps again, after the initial review has been completed of all of the challenges, we will run a process to determine which census block groups have 6 or more challenges against them of the same provider technology challenge type combination. And when that occurs, for that provider, there will be an automatic area challenge generated for every location that provider offers that technology at within that census block group.
Okay, so I have submitted the evidence and I have submitted challenge already with all of the locations that if the census block group has 200, but I thought it's just a handful that would be, worthwhile for the challenge. I select all of those. What should I do with those challenges that are already submitted now? Should I retract them?
Dustin, do you want me to answer that?
Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, that's thank you. That's a good clarification, and you're doing exactly the right thing. As long as you've collected, you do not have to collect all of the locations in that census block group to have the system at the end of the challenge initial review process. If all of those challenges meet the required level of evidence, then it will trigger an automated area challenge. So if you have 6 locations within a census block that are the same technology, same provider, where you have good evidence that says the service that they are saying is there is not there, we will review that. If they get passed, then they will generate an area challenge, and that will generate a challenge against that particular provider and technology for every location that they serve within that census block group. Does that sort of make it any clearer?
Yeah, I understand. It's census block group though, not census block, right? I'm hearing
Yes,
census block group.
it's a census block group. That is correct.
So I already submitted those challenge. Do I withdraw the challenge and resubmit them? What should I do?
No, leave them as they are. If the evidence is there.
Phil, I think maybe if I'm understanding the question correctly, it sounds like there was evidence gathered for just 6 of the locations within that census block group, but all of the locations within that census block group were selected for the challenge.
Right. And I used the evidence data file to flag which location BSL has the evidence.
Gotcha. They would still count because we would pass the 6. We would not pass the remaining challenges. They would still count towards the area challenge.
Okay, so I'll just leave as is.
And I apologize. I didn't fully understand the question. Dustin, thanks for putting me straight there.
No, thank you.
Great questions today. Question from Bruce. Marin County carried out automated speed tests and invited residents to participate through a survey that included the BEAD challenge attestation language. We do not have subscriber invoices. Will the survey attestation be sufficient? As I think we've done this most weeks, but putting in the chat the link to NTIA's requirements for speed tests. And that has the information that needs to be submitted along with those speed tests. It details it right there. Unfortunately, without seeing these submitted with the challenge, as we've said before, we can't comment on what that level of evidence that is outside of what has been required how we would assess that. So we'd have to see that when it's submitted. Bruce, are you here?
Sorry, yes, I am. Yeah, so we have this is an all data gathering exercise on our part. And so we have the answers that the residents have given us. So we'll submit that and any other kind of like form that shows you how we gathered the attestation. And we'll submit that as evidence.
Phil, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I have to admit, I credit you for going to the extent of doing that. That's excellent. I would absolutely please submit whatever you have supporting evidence, and we will review it during the review process. Thank you.
Good.
Okay. All right, Carrie, it would be helpful to be able to add evidence under consumers' existing challenge. We often request, okay, this is what we talked about earlier, correct, Carrie?
Yes. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, and just I put the CP the BEAD email in there. Kevin, I emailed you from it, so hopefully you got that. And then we did clarify that it is by census block group. So Paul has asked as a CPUC deduplicated funding sources, I think, on the current challenge map, and then their FFA awarded locations on the challenge map. So as part of the requirement for the challenge process, we did conduct a deduplication of state and local funding prior to us beginning the challenge process. The awards for FFA were issued after that, and so those will be accounted for in the post-challenge deduplication process. So that will be done before we send everything over to NTIA. So any enforceable commitments that were established during the course or during the course of the challenge process will be captured then. Paul, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Laura.
You're welcome. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left. Want to leave just 5 minutes to wrap up, but if anyone has additional questions, please put them in chat. Dealing with ADUs. I'm guessing, this is me. I'm guessing it would depend on whether or not they have a BSL associated with them. But that
They don't, but the providers show up and say they can serve them. That's the crazy thing. And so as part of the crowdsource, as part of the crowdsource, I mean, does the resident need to put their ADUs on there, or will the providers finally update and allow future funding sources? This is beyond the BEAD. It may not make it to the BEAD. I'm just asking for future funding sources.
I don't know. Amy, is that something that from your experience providers attest to when they do the BDC updates?
I think so it's possible. Those updates, that information for the fabric can come in multiple ways. And I think that's what we're really talking about here, right? Adding locations that are not currently broadband serviceable locations to the underlying address list or the fabric. So it comes in the CostQuest, which is the provider that provides that information, often does its own research and has been picking up various types of ADUs in the latest versions of the fabric, but not everything. In addition, fabric challenges could be filed. So that's something that if you have enough information, you may want to actually consider filing a direct fabric challenge either on version 4, which is the current fabric version, or version 5 when that becomes, that is technically available. Phil, I'd have to check to see if you can actually start filing challenges against that version. I think that data won't be, the associated data with that fabric won't be available until December. So that's something worth considering, but there are multiple ways to get that information. And you're right, it would be a future. I think it's worth setting up the community for future funding sources at this time, because that does tend to be the trend of certainly where federal funding is coming from. Did that help, Paul? Hopefully that helped.
No, it did. It did. It is setting up the residents, the communities to update, to crowdsource, and the BDC will accept that evidence. It's just if it ever makes it to the BEAD, and specifically more of the FCC's requirement, what exactly? Because some communities do an address and a half, where some communities do additional building to the same address, and so it varies.
Phil, any additional thoughts there?
Paul, I don't have any great news for you, but I can say that Amy is completely correct. CostQuest has an AI-based program that they run through on a regular basis to try and pick up additional accessory buildings. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. That's how the FCC generates new versions of their fabric, which then we would have to look at, review, and decide what to do with. So it's not a perfect science, and I would certainly encourage you to collect as much as you can and submit it through basically as a fabric update, fabric challenge.
And I did put in the chat, and Paul, I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of this at Golden State Net and seen it, but just if you do want to do the BDC challenge, that's there. Ben, that's there for you as well, if that's something that you're interested in. And Ben, what a really nice note. Thank you so much. Ben said, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge all of you at the CPUC in managing this complex effort. The challenge map is an amazing source of information, and although the map is not likely to be totally accurate, it's a significant step in forward identifying where to invest funding. And that's truly what it's meant to be, is that this process makes it better for everyone in the future, and also as future funding sources become available as well. So Ben, thank you so much. You've had some really good questions that have challenged us, and we greatly appreciate that. And thank you for your patience as well. You've been very patient with us. And
well, this is a challenge process, right?
Challenging process. Yeah, exactly.
But really, it's an amazing effort. I'm quite amazed at how well you've done at providing this information. It's a very, very complex task with a very good goal, I think. But I think I'll just say this: I think it's going to be important to incorporate BDC into the ongoing evaluation of where funding should go. I think BDC is what this is all based upon, and we're just trying to tune it with this challenge process. But further enforcement on the BDC reporting, I think, is going to be very valuable at achieving our goal for all of us here. But anyway, thank you for all you've done.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it. Kate, if you've got a question, could you put it in chat for us just so we can capture it, please? And then we'll take that question, and then we'll do some wrap up.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Thanks.
Sure, no problem. And I know it's hard to multitask, so.
Do you want me to also verbalize the question? It's a little complicated, so it'll take me a while to type out.
Yeah, go ahead and verbalize it. And then if you can either pop it in chat, or if you don't get a chance to, just email it to us and we'll capture it that way.
Okay. And I just jumped in, so I apologize if you've already talked about this or answered it. But I work for Sonoma County Economic Development Board. We are a registered challenger. And to my knowledge, the only one in our county. So all of the consumer challenges are coming through to me to review and pass along. And we've been doing a lot of individual outreach, and I expect a lot of people to wait until the last minute to submit their challenges, just because, human nature. And so my question is, if a bunch of people submit consumer challenges on the last day, or even like in the last few hours, is there any window for me to review those and communicate with people if there's like pieces missing from their challenge that goes beyond that August 6th, or is the deadline for consumers as well as challengers the same?
The deadline for consumers and challengers is the same, and that's 11:59 on August 6th. And so at that point, both their consumers will not be able to, and this answers Bruce's question as well. That's the point that there's the cutoff for consumer challenges in the on their website, and also for permissible challengers to submit on their behalf in the portal.
So if a bunch of people in Sonoma County submit challenges at like 11 p.m., if someone from my organization isn't online to pass those through, will those ones that are like, you know, waiting in the portal but not passed through be viewed at all? Or there's just my
If
concern.
they haven't been submitted, they will not move through.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it's kind of the communication from the permissible challenge that opted in to either individuals or however like a mailing list or however the information got out in the first place. You guys are probably sick of our constant contacts, but if you have a mechanism to do that throughout your county and just let people know, maybe if you want to set your own kind of arbitrary deadline of noon or something like that, understanding that there still may be a few stragglers, but maybe finding a way to get ahead of that a little bit.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's a great question. Appreciate you asking. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left, so if we can bring the slides up really quick. It's mostly standard information, so you probably already know most of these. So next steps. Next slide. So as we said, this is our last office hours for the challenge phase. We will be taking a little bit of a break while we spend the time evaluating all the evidence that you guys have submitted. And on August 8th, we will have a webinar specifically focusing on the rebuttal phase for broadband service providers. Everyone is welcome to attend, but that's the audience for that. And then starting on the 15th, which is a week before the rebuttal phase starts, we'll also open up office hours, and we'll have office hours throughout the entirety of the rebuttal phase. So for any of our broadband service providers who are here today, those will probably be some very valuable opportunities for you to ask questions, either based on what you're experiencing or what you saw in the webinar. And we will have a live demo in the webinar so that you kind of see what it looks like to submit rebuttals in the portal and that sort of thing. So the final slide is I'm going to combine the last slide with a big thank you to all of you. Most of you are familiar with, if you've got technical questions, to email the Ready Help Desk, and then the BEAD email is just for general BEAD questions. We are getting a lot, and they're really good questions, so a lot of them do require additional resource. So thank you for your patience with that. And then we have some additional resource pages there. So we can take slides down. But a really big thank you to all of you who have participated in these office hours with us. You've helped us understand your perspective much better. This is the first time anybody's done this, so we also really appreciate and thank you for not only your participation and your dedication to navigating this complex program, but really just being patient with us as well. So thank you to everyone, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we will probably hear from or see some of you shortly. Take care.
Thank you.